Okay, now that I'm recording it, I can always go backtrack and put it onto Facebook. So anyway, welcome to this installment of the book of Isaiah, and we are going to be doing chapters 26 and 27 tonight. And so let's begin with the blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with his commandments and commands us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. So, anyway, my name is Steve Sheik. I'm the congregation leader at Tree of Life Messianic Congregation we meet in Katy, Texas. And so you see all of our web pages and all that kind of stuff over on the lower left-hand corner of the title page there. So we can go ahead and get going. Tonight, we are going to finish off this part of the book. And then next week we'll jump off into judgment on all the earth instead of just on Judah's neighbors, and then we'll get started on that. And so let me get a couple more people in, and just so you know, in May, on the 21st of May, I will not be available for class, so you can put that on your calendar. And then on the 28th of May, we are going to be having a post Shavuot picnic get together at our house out here in the country. And so we'll not be broadcasting that night either. So at the 21st and the 28th of May, we will not be having class. And then the following week, the 4th of June, I'll be back on the 3rd of June. I will be speaking at the memorial service for my classmate, Stephen Campbell. We'll be driving over to that, but we'll be back for the class on Sunday night. So anyway, just to kind of keep you up with where we are and what we're going to be doing. As far as the dates on this particular part of Isaiah, I haven't moved the timeline anywhere because we're still kind of stuck in the same place, and Isaiah is actually talking about things that are present, future, and a little bit in the past, and so it really doesn't lend itself to tying it down to a specific timeline or a date anyway. So we're right around this 705 to 701 time frame, something like that. And so it's right here. My timeline hasn't changed. The goalposts are still in the same spot. So, but tonight we're going to be finishing off this particular page. So next week you won't see this page anymore. But we'll be talking about the city of God and the final gathering. So let's just go ahead and jump into it. These chapters 26 and 27, they continue the thought of chapters 24 and 25. So they're kind of a unit in a way, because of God's victory over the city of oppression, mainly Babylon and the world order of such. However, the focus is changed somewhat, whereas chapters 24 and 25 focus on the victory and the feast that follows that. Chapters 26 and 27, they reflect some, a little bit more on a solemn vein, I guess you'd say, and the meaning of the victory for Judah. And so it's really just only a relative change in emphasis because the general theme of what Isaiah is trying to say here is God's sovereignty, and that remains the central focus of central importance. And so as a result of that, of God's sovereignty, then we have the hope that stems from that conviction of his sovereignty. So the things are they're kind of let's look at some of these verses here, and the main theme. The main theme is still the sovereignty of God, and we'll be looking at verses 1-6, and that's a song of thanksgiving in which Judah encourages herself to keep faith with God, who has kept faith with her. Verses 7-15 are a reflection on the truth that the wicked can understand nothing except the rod of judgment upraised on behalf of God's people. Verses 16-19 is a short lament, recognizing that God's people are totally helpless, hopeless in and of themselves. They can do nothing of themselves. 20-27, verse 20-27, is the promise that God will indeed act on their behalf. And then the verses from 27-2 till the end there talks about God's passion for his vineyard, his people. So any comments or questions before we begin on that? I don't know that we have anybody new here tonight, so you know the drill. If you want to say something, just unmute yourself and talk away. All right. Verse 1 and 2. In that day, this song will be sung in the land of Judah. We have a strong city. He appoints salvation as its walls and ramparts. Open the gates, let the righteous nation enter, one that keeps faith. All right. So this I see right there in the first line a misspelled word, and that just threw me right off the tracks there because my OCD just went haywire right then. So this is a song that will be sung in the millennial period, and that's when on that day. What that means is, and it will be sung in Jerusalem as a representative of the Jewish people. It will be there in Jerusalem, and the Jerusalem, this new Jerusalem that God will set up, will be a place of strength and security for the redeemed, and we could read that in Revelation 21 and 25. So 21 and 22, and so a lot of the interpreters believe that this city will be an actual, a literal city with walls and with gates, but other interpreters say that no, this is just a metaphor. It's just a description, and it's totally metaphorical. And so that if it's a metaphor, that meant that Isaiah meant only that God would provide strength and security for his people. And personally, I don't see why it couldn't be both. It could be a walled city, which is kind of cool. And Jerusalem is kind of walled off today. Parts of Israel are walled off. They've walled off some of the terrorists. And so why couldn't it be that way? However, we know that walls are not a foolproof thing, and that God would have to also provide the security outside the brick and mortar, because brick and mortar is not going to work. We know that. So, and that righteous nation that we're talking about here is Israel, but it could also mean that it could be all of those who are the redeemed, those who have put their faith and trust in God and his son Yeshua. So it's not real clear here, but I think I would be fairly safe to say that when they talk about the nation coming in, primarily will be Israel, but then also the redeemed Israel, an Israel that has come to the conclusion they've said in their hearts that, blessed is he, Baruch haba Hashem Adonai, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. They recognize the messiahship of Yeshua. So, Isaiah, who's writing this song here, he calls on the doorkeepers, the gatekeepers, to open up these city gates, and so the nation that was right with God could enter. And so, like I said, on the black and white, it is Israel, but then I believe it could also mean the redeemed, the nations, the people that are redeemed of God. So, and if you're welcome to disagree with me on there, because I don't have a hard opinion of that. Verse 3 and 4, you keep in perfect peace one whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. Trust in Adonai forever, for the Lord Adonai is a rock of ages. Now, these two verses are pretty powerful verses. I mean, they're ones that, I've quoted, you've had them quoted to you, that you probably had it quoted in the King James Version, as I did for all my life. But this is very close to that, and to experience that security of God's city, one thing is required: you have to have a fixed disposition of trust in God. Now, this is quite opposite of what, say, in the book of James, where James is talking about the double-minded man, and you find that in James 1, first chapter. I think it's 6 and 8, something like that. But it's the first chapter of James. Yeshua's servant have two masters, where it says you can't serve two masters. That's in Matthew 6:24. Well, this person that we're talking about here, that a resident of this city, the new city, the New Jerusalem, is one that has just cast himself totally, 100%, without reservation on God, and that's where his trust is. So if you're the kind of guy that you trust in your ability partly, and trust in God partly, so that's to me, that's a prescription for insecurity and anxiety, because you never know what's going to happen, and you're certainly never going to know the wholeness and the shalom, the peace and completeness that comes with casting everything on God. What does it say? Cast all your cares on him, and that is what really can bring you the peace. Now, this is I wouldn't want to say that we would denigrate or diminish God-given abilities, because God has given people many abilities to do great things. But what I'm saying here is that if we refuse to believe the lie that we are independent and have in ourselves the ability to the ultimate success in life, that if you think that that we as a person or we as a body have everything that we need within us, that we are in our self gods, then you've blown it. And that's just not going to work out for you in the end. And so but the person that refuses those kind of ideas and looks steadfastly on God can you're going to know an inner peace that makes even the worst nightmare that's coming your direction look like something, well, that we can weather this storm. So for all of our mortality and short-sightedness and weakness, in exchange, when we trust in God, we get his immortality for our mortality. We get his omniscience for our short-sightedness, and we get his omnipotence in place of our weakness. Now that is security. So,
amen.
There you go. Isaiah urged everyone to trust in the Lord as a way of life, not as just a saving act of faith, because it says Adonai, even Adonai, is the very essence of what is what the rock of salvation, or an everlasting rock should be. So, his presence in our lives, it's a unmoving place of refuge and protection from the elements, from all enemies. And I think the guy that wrote the Christian hymn Rock of Ages got it from this verse right here. And all throughout the Bible, they describe God as being our rock and fortress. It's a symbol of security for all of us. And so the issue here is trust, and that's trust in God. That began all the way back in chapter 7 of Isaiah, and then it will conclude in chapter 39. So we've still got another 12 chapters to go when we will finish that theme of trusting in God, and the idea of, will Judah commit her security to the nations or to God? All right. So it says, for he humbles those dwelling on high, leveling the lofty city, leveling it to the ground, bringing it down to the dust. Feet will trample it down, feet of the afflicted, the footsteps of the poor. Now, this New Jerusalem is secure because God brought the city down. He brought down this city of the world, Babylonianism. I don't know if that's a word. I just made it up. But the world order of Babylon, it's and we're fighting that same thing today with people wanting to bring in a new world order, and they may bring it in, but guess what? God is still in control, and he will bring it down in his time. And so, and what does it say? That the oppressed will trample it down. It'll be trampled down by the feet of the afflicted and the footsteps of the poor. So God has always been against the high and mighty, the ones who are seemingly above the law, the ones that can get subpoenas for their emails and hard drives and destroy them and say, now what you going to do? They'll get theirs. The oppressed will survive. God says we are. And even, Yeshua spoke of it in the Sermon on the Mount, where he said, the meek shall inherit the earth. And so let's go ahead with 7 and 8. Anybody, any comments so far? Okay, the way of the righteous is straight, upright one. You make smooth the path of the righteous. Yes, in the way of your judgments, Adonai, we have waited for you. Your name and your remembrance is the desire of our soul. Now, this one is imagery. This is all about imagery. And if you've ever been to Israel, you know that all the roads that are up around Jerusalem anyway, not out on the coastal plain, but up around Jerusalem, all of the roads are uphill both ways, seems like. It's always, and if that's that way now with highways and tunnels and stuff like that, you can imagine what it was, 2,000, 3,000 years ago, that the roads would have been twisty, turny, up and over, rocky and dangerous. But Isaiah here is saying that he's moved on from this hymn or the song of thanksgiving. Now he's moving into dependence, and how God has made the way for the righteous a straight one. It's not up and down and over and twist and hairpin turns, curves and all that kind of stuff. It's a straight path. And then he calls God the upright one. And that's that is again just an image of God as being the one who upholds justice and does the right thing all the time. As you make smooth the path of the righteous. So even though sometimes as believers, we're going to run into potholes in the highway. They're just, if we're staying with the imagery here, and you're going to have roadblocks, you're going to have detours, you're going to have all sorts of things. But guess what? God still has made a way for us through all of those things. That God makes a way through the wilderness. I think there's an old gospel hymn that says something like that. And and they said, in the way of your judgment, because of your judgments, Adonai, we have waited for you. Or even in the midst of all of these judgments, Israel realizes that they have to have a dependence on God. And so they're waiting for him. And through all of this, they never forgot the name of the Lord. They never forgot that they were God's chosen people. And, we can go back through the Assyrian exile, the Babylonian exile, the Roman exile, the oppression under Antiochus Epiphanes, and just right on, throughout history, and then even in the Holocaust. It was God had preserved the memories. He's preserved the character of the Jewish people. And a lot of times people will ask me, well, why do y'all do that? All of the liturgy and all of that kind of stuff, and all of those feasts and customs and everything. And that is, and I'll explain to them that is in part what helped the Jewish people to preserve their ethnic, national, and religious identity throughout all of the things that they've been through. So anyway, in these verses, the name of the Lord, his character, his being, and the Jewish people never forgot, as a whole, they never forgot who they were and whose they were, if you get my drift. They've remembered that they are the chosen people. That's who they are. And who do they belong to? They belong to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so that's an important thing. And I think it's important for believers today. I don't have one of my hats around here, but I could show you where in the hat band of my hats. And I wear a hat everywhere I go. So in the band of the hat, I have the scripture of the Ve'ahavta, which says, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your mind and all your soul." And then to put these words on your put it on your hand, and may it be a frontlet between your eyes, and then you put it on the doors, your doors and your gates, and doorposts and gates, Well, and so I made this thing up to put in the hat band of my hats, because that's where I'm binding it as frontlets between my eyes, and I can look at that every time I put my hat on, and I know who I am and whose I am. So it's just my way of walking out that particular halakha, that commandment that God has given us. So anyway, going on. Did I push? Right. Okay. This is, my soul longs for you at night. Yes, my spirit within me seeks you. For when your judgments are in the earth, the inhabitants of the world learn righteousness. Though grace is shown to the wicked, he does not learn righteousness. Even in a land of uprightness, he will act wrongly, not perceiving the majesty of Adonai. So I don't know if you'd have to read it in, well, I guess in English it also has that, where the last word in verse 8 is soul, nephesh, and nephesh, and then the first word in the Hebrew is nafshi, which means my soul. So the last word of verse 8 is soul. The first word of verse 9 is soul, and it's the word nephesh, or it's the lowest level of soul in Jewish thought, and that's what we would call the animal spirit. Okay, and so Carmen, just behave yourself. We're all animals here, and so we had a discussion in okay, here she goes. She almost said it. We had a discussion in Torah Club about that we're animals, and she said, "I'm not an animal. I'm a human being. My dog's an animal. My cat's an animal. I'm a human being." And but it's the part of us that is the essence that makes us a living, breathing entity. That's nephesh. That's the word that's used here. And so what Isaiah is saying there is that me, at the very base level of my existence, I've longed for you at night. Not in, it's not in some high and lofty like on the fifth level of a soul. No, he's down here at the very bottom, and just his very base instinct and guts and all that. That's where he is longing for God, right at the very base of himself. And so I thought, that spoke to me anyway when I realized that, looked at those two words and spent a good bit of time researching that and trying to figure that one out. But then it talks about waiting on the Lord and how they wait for him. And so then they talk about the grace of God. God gives grace to his enemies, to the enemies of Israel, and still that does not persuade them, even though they are given grace. That doesn't persuade them to or provoke them into righteousness. And even though they could live in the land of Israel, live among righteous people wherever they are, that just doesn't seem to sway the wicked person. And it's only really by judgment and punishment do the wicked people come about, as it were. And I've seen that in cultures here in this world. There are cultures in this world today that we are at war with, that the only thing they understand is greater force. And you can't be nice to some of these cultures, and you have to be ruthless and defeat them. And so sometimes you talk about, I hear people talking about, well, if just love someone into the kingdom. No, sometimes you just have to give them a bloody nose, I guess, figuratively speaking. We do have to wage warfare, and it's not pretty a lot of the times. And here Isaiah is saying, look, the bad guys do not learn, even if God gives them grace and he's kind to them. They don't learn. They don't change their wicked ways. And the only way that they'll come around to God's way of thinking is through judgment. And they get to the point where they've been defeated, and that they know that they cannot win. At that point, then they'll accept God's power, and we'll read about that a little bit later on as we get into the next chapter. So, okay, that was kind of controversial, maybe. I don't know. Anybody got something to say on that?
No, but I agree.
Okay. Sometimes you just gotta be tough. That's all. I think James Dobson called it tough love. So verse 11, here we are. Adonai, your hand is lifted up, yet they do not see it. They will see your zeal for the people and be put to shame. Yes, fire will devour your enemies. Adonai, you will establish shalom for us, for all our works you have done for us. Adonai Eloheinu, our lords, other lords beside you have had dominion over us, but we remember your name alone. So at this point, that imagery there of your hand is lifted up. Now, why his hand is lifted up? Well, that's because there's a weapon in that hand, and there's a scepter, or there's power in that hand. And that's what it meant by your hand is lifted up. If your hand was, you're defensive, you're offensive. But if your hand is down, then perhaps you're not on the defense. You're not even watching what's going on. But if that hand is up, then that's what there's Isaiah saying, God, your hand is up and you are taking care of business. But the wicked don't see it. They're just ignoring the power of God, and he can see how much God has done for his people, and yet they still just blowing it off. And but he said they eventually will be put to shame. Why? Because people who are against God, the high, the mighty, and so forth, they are going to be defeated. They're going to be put to shame. And says, yes, fire will devour your enemies. And so God will bring, he says, he'll establish shalom, or peace, for us. And shalom has so much more meaning than just peace. I mean, today we use the word shalom, and you answer the telephone, shalom. And if you're in Israel, not so much in Texas. And it means hello, or I guess it is a wish for peace, but it's got so much more meaning and so much more depth than just that peace. It's completeness. It's just everything that God has wrapped up for us. That's in that word shalom. And it says, you will establish shalom for us, for all our works you have done for us. Everything that God has done for them, he has done for his people. He is doing for his people, and I'm saying his people now to include all those who are redeemed, and he will do for his people. And so now it goes back to Adonai Eloheinu, our God, Lord our God. Other lords, other little g gods, other rulers besides you have had dominion over us. And so they admit that, okay, they've been oppressed. The Jewish people have been conquered. They've been oppressed for over and over and over again. But they said, we haven't forgotten your name. We remember your name alone. all of these other gods, the little g gods that they're in history. Well, where are they now? They're just an archaeological curiosity in many cases. So this is what Isaiah is talking about here, that God kept his people throughout all the oppressions of the world. So let's go ahead with verse 14. The dead do not live, dead souls do not rise. Thus you punished and destroyed them and wiped out all memory of them. You have increased the nation, Adonai. You have increased the nation. You are glorified as you have expanded all the borders of the land. Adonai, they sought you in distress. They poured out a whispered prayer when your discipline was upon them. All right, now, these, those who are oppressed, those who oppressed God's people, they have died, and they're gone by this time. God punished them. And so many of the names of these people have been forgotten and are, actually irretrievable by historians. Now, some of them we know, and even some of the more famous ones that you're still not going to know unless you just happen to be a Bible scholar or just a history nerd like me that reads this kind of stuff. Who in the world, if you'd never studied Isaiah before and listened to some of the stuff I come up with, how many of you ever heard of Sennacherib or Nabopolassar or some of these other guys? You don't. They're gone. Nobody pays any attention to them. Sure, some of the more famous ones are still kind of out there, but I don't know if school kids even know who Hammurabi is and the Code of Hammurabi and those kind of things. I don't even know if they teach that anymore in school. But
do the
God,
school kids know who Abraham is even? I mean, come on.
I don't know, unless he's some kind of a rap singer, probably not. So it is we can see that today, that a lot of these people, they're gone by the way, and yet the Jewish people have remained, and God said he would always keep a remnant, that the Jewish people are always going to be in the world, and so that's what he's talking about here. You punished them, you destroyed them, wiped out all their memory. It says you've increased the nation. Now, it says millennial borders of Israel will be larger, okay? And, okay, and I think I got a picture. Okay, here's some pictures of different interpretations as to what the borders of Israel will be in the millennial period. And you see that this one here kind of ends up right down here on the Wadi of Egypt. That's that dry creek bed that we've talked about before, and not the river of Egypt being the Nile. No, that's not what they're talking about. But that's what this map shows, that Israel going to go all the way down all of course this here is all of the Sinai Peninsula, and then on down into Egypt and so on and so forth. And then there's another one here that goes even further, that says that this is going to be the full promised land of Israel, and it'll go all the way over and encompass Kuwait and Iran, Iraq, and Syria, and those, all of that, and a good bit of Saudi Arabia and down here. This particular representation here, I think it's it's way overblown, and it stems a lot. It stems from the people that don't understand that the river of Egypt is not the Nile here, but it's the Wadi, which runs from Eilat back up here to just below the Gaza Strip, and that was and still is the southern border of Israel. Now the northern borders will be, the Bible does talk about how that'll go up to the Euphrates, and but Israel never accomplished that. They never realized the full extent of what God gave them, when they came out of the wilderness and into the Canaan, and they were said, okay, you can take all this land, this is yours. Well, they didn't take all of it, and they didn't. A lot of it they tried to conquer, and they didn't do it. They just gave up on it, like the tribe of Dan. They ran into problems, so they just packed up and moved north, and to where they wouldn't have the problems, rather than fight and secure the land that God had given them. So in that way, Israel really they lost it in that regard, because they just didn't do what God told them to do. They never reached their potential, and it's kind of a sad thing, but we see the same thing today in our lives, that the Bible says that Yeshua says, greater things than these will you do, because I go to the Father and I'm sending the Holy Spirit to you. And we look at all of that, and you just, wow, I don't think we are anywhere near the potential that Yeshua says that we could be and should be, because having the Holy Spirit in our lives. So that's a sermon for another day and another time. So we need to get going back to verse 16 here. All right, that it's not totally understood. In fact, I probably should reword that and say that is totally not understood. What it means and who it's talking about, it's really enigmatic. But you could look at the book of Judges and see that, okay, that you remember in the book of Judges where the Israelites were, they would be up here, and then they'd go into idolatry and sink further and further, and then they would be oppressed by their neighbors, and then they would cry out for help from the Lord, and He would send in a Samson or a Deborah or something like that, and then they would win their battles, and then they'd back up on top, and then they would drop down. So they went through about 6 or 7 cycles of that in the book of Judges, and so it's talking about here that if we go back up to the verses where it says, they poured out a whispered prayer when your discipline was upon them. So that could have been the Israelites themselves in the time of the Judges. It's just not really clear there. So again, that's not one that you're going to build doctrine on, unless somebody else here has got an answer for me. All right, somebody got a chat. Okay, so and Rich asked, okay, what you said regarding the tribe of Dan, is that why they aren't mentioned in Revelation 7:4-8? I don't know, Rich. I can't answer that right off the top of my head, so I'm not going to make something up. But it could very well be that they gave up and left. But Simeon is another one that never did anything. They were totally engulfed by the tribe of Judah and their land and everything. And so, we'll see how that goes. In fact, I don't know. Let's look back at some of these maps here, see if we can find Dan in there, because that did bring up question. Whoops. I don't know. Where's my pictures? Oh, okay, here we go. So they got Dan all the way up at the top there, and that's basically where they actually settled, was way north. But they settled actually somewhere right in where Manasseh was, okay, and that would have been right about in this area. But then with the expanded borders, they put them up here. So I'm not real sure that like I said, I just don't know the answer to that as to why Dan was not mentioned in Revelation 7:4-8. Unless you got an idea on that, Rich. I don't have one. I'm clueless right now, or at least I don't have an answer for you.
I don't either, but I think they must have disqualified themselves in the sight of God for some reason.
Possibly so. I don't know. But then we also have the this division of land for Israel, and yeah, it was divided up as according to their tribe and the size of the tribe. Initially, all of the land was divided up when they went in from the wilderness, from the Exodus. But a lot of this stuff, it's just not known, and it's just open to conjecture. So so how's that? I don't know. We just have to go. We have to go on. So, and let's see. Let me get back to, I think we're in verses 17 here now. So, all right. As a pregnant woman about to give birth writhes and cries out in her pain, so we were before you, Adonai. We have been with child, we have been in pain, yet we gave birth to wind. We are accomplishing no deliverance for the earth, nor are inhabitants of the world coming to life. Okay, now this is a self-condemnation that is totally justified. Israel's, in their own times, they went through many pains, trials, they were oppressed, they were overrun, they were tortured and beaten, all that kind of stuff. And, like a woman in labor. And, but, that woman in labor, she goes through that, and there's pain and all that, but she goes through it because she's got hope. She's got hope that in the end of all of this, she knows that there's going to be a baby. And that's what she's looking for. There's going to be something there. All right. And so in Israel's time, okay, they're going through the pains and all that. And yet at the end, when it says push, 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 all they get is nothing but air. There's nothing there. And Israel did not fulfill what God gave them to do. They were told to be a light to the nation. They were supposed to teach the world that there is only one God. And what did they do? Well, instead of doing that, they took on the little g gods of the nations. Instead of converting them, they got converted. So that's what Isaiah is saying here. We did not do anything that we were supposed to have done. And so that's what those verses mean. And verse 19 says, "Yet it will be, your dead will live, my corpses will rise. Awake and shout for joy, you who dwell in the dust. Your dew is like the dew of the dawn. The land of dead souls will come to life." All right. Now, this is another one that's really got a lot of different interpretation to it. I think Isaiah was referring to a national survival. I don't know, was he talking about national survival or an individual resurrection here? Probably both. And he had been talking about what we'd call the near-death experiences of Israel in the preceding verses, in 16 through 18, and he had already revealed that there would be a remnant that would enter into the millennium, but in the same passage, Isaiah also looked forward to the abolition or the victory of life over death, the abolition of death itself. And so probably what we have here is, but it's a figurative and a literal resurrection in view, a figurative resurrection of Israel in the future, and then a literal resurrection of Israelites in the future. Figurative of the nation, but the real and the literal resurrection of Israelites sometime in the future. Now, we saw part of that when Yeshua was resurrected, and they said that bodies came out of the tombs and walked around Jerusalem for a while. And can you imagine what that would have been like? I don't know. And why Josephus didn't write about that, I just don't know. But it's it would have been something if that had the electronic media that we have today. Somebody would have covered it, unless it was not advantageous to their party. So we'll just well, maybe it wouldn't have been covered because it would not be advantageous to the religious establishment of the day. So anyway, they talk about those that dwell in the dust. That is a typical description from the ancient world at that time. They talk about those in the dust, and that is people in the underworld, and therefore, it's just that whole idea that the underworld is dark and dirty and dusty and so forth. So then they also talk about the dew on the ground, and the dew on the ground is very, very important in that part of the world where sometimes you don't have a lot of rain. In fact, they have rainwater or actual water capture things over there in Israel that are big nets, vertical nets that collect the dew in as the nighttime, and then it drips along these nets and down into water catchment, and that's another way of harvesting water for them. So anyway, they talk. That's part of what that, and it says the land of dead souls will come to life. Okay, and that's again talking about a resurrection. The land of dead souls could very well, that's Israel, and we all know that there will be a resurrection when even the ungodly are going to be resurrected and then going to come to judgment. And so that's what part of what Isaiah is talking about here. So
I had a comment here.
Hey,
I just wanted to say that in John 3, when you have Nicodemus, this is why he was getting chewed out. You're a teacher in Israel and you don't know this? Because this verse implied a resurrection, and he should have known this. This is one of the kingpin verses of the Pharisees. And they believed in a resurrection, and this is one of the reasons why is this verse. And do I go in my mother's womb and get excuse me?
Well,
born from above. Here it is. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good point. Of course, I think old Nick might have been playing devil's advocate there too a little bit. I don't know. But anyway, it says, "Go, my people, enter your rooms, shut your doors behind you, hide for a little while until the wrath is past. For behold, Adonai is coming out from his place to punish inhabitants of the earth for iniquity. The earth will disclose her bloodshed, no longer covering up her slain." So Now, here the prophet Isaiah. Now he addressed his people rather than God. He's telling he's telling Israel or Judah to go and hide for a while. Before this whole restoration of Israel, God's people will experience hard times. That's going to be the tribulation. And those of you that have been around me enough, long enough, know that I do not teach a pre-rapture, a pre-tribulation rapture of the body of believers. In fact, what I teach may not even be you could call the traditional Christian view of rapture, but there again, another teaching for another day. But just to say that God's people, whether they're Jewish or Gentile, that are believers in Yeshua, are going to go through tribulation and hard times. And he says, go and hide yourself, try to protect yourself as best you can. And that it's not going to be a forever kind of a thing, but you do need to shut your doors against your foes, protect yourself, do what you need to do. In fact, maybe if I dare say it, be a prepper. Get to make sure that you can withstand a few months without power, without groceries, without water. And it's something that a lot of people, I've heard people say, well, where's your faith in God? Well, God tells you in some cases, go take care of business and hunker down, shelter in place. That's what he's telling them right here, shelter in place. And so this shutting the doors suggests both safety from danger and separation from others. And in this case, the pagans. We have to kind of separate ourselves away from the world. And certainly today, that's something that we really do need to look at, is not going along with this foolishness, this woke foolishness in the world, and agreeing that, well, we're just going to live and let live. No, I can't do that. Where my children, my grandchildren, not my children, but my grandchildren are involved in schools that teach perversity and just all sorts of abomination, is what the Bible calls it. So no, we have to separate ourselves away from that and fight against that. And then verse 21 says, Adonai would come out of his heavenly place to quiet to his heavenly throne of quiet, and he was going to punish the earth dwellers during the tribulation. And and it says even the earth itself will assist the Lord in that. They'll have earthquakes and volcanoes and hurricanes and so forth. That they didn't mention global warming. Sorry, but that's where Isaiah is looking from his standpoint, is that the earth itself is going to just physically be done with the sin, and they're going to try to just basically open up the graves of the wicked ones, and so that their sins are all exposed. So I said, in that day, Adonai will punish Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, with his with his fierce great sword, Leviathan, the twisted serpent. He will slay the dragon in the sea. Okay, now this dragon, this Leviathan thing, it was something very horrific that you read about that in Job 3:8, and it seems like it's have been some kind of a water beast, whether it was in reality or in myth. The psalmist used Leviathan figuratively as a description of Egypt, like large crocodiles or something like that. But for the Israelis, for the Jewish people, they were not seafaring people. Okay, and so anything out there in that Great Sea, the Mediterranean, that was mystery for them, and they just weren't having much of it. So the early Israelites at the time of the conquest were definitely not seafaring people, and so that's a lot of this beast, the Leviathan, comes out of Canaanite mythology, and it could very well be that there was some kind of a real person. I know young earthers talk about that Leviathan and other things, other dragons and so forth, could have been real. I don't know. Different time, different couldn't
it be a government?
I don't think so.
Great
Not the way
government.
I don't think the way that Leviathan is spoken of all throughout the Old Testament. It was more of a physical fear that people had of something out there, and it was not assigned to say a warring country or a ruler.
Oh.
This was more like the monster under your bed.
Okay.
And that's just something that it is something that inhabits the sea, and something that's totally not controllable by human beings, and that's why they were so afraid of it. So anyway, God is going to slay the Leviathan, whatever it was, whoever it was or whatever it was. He's going to slay that. He's going to basically slay those things that cause us to have nightmares at night, and that's kind of the way I would put it. Anyway, that's so. Anyway, I had a whole bunch of stuff talking about just the Leviathan, but I don't have time to go through it tonight. So in verses 2-4. In that day seemed to her a vineyard of delight. I Adonai watched over it. I watered it every moment. I guard it day and night, so that no one may harm it. It is not that I have wrath. Who would give me thorns and thistles? Into battle I would march against them. I would burn them up altogether. So here the Lord is saying, okay, this whole scene shifts now to a productive vineyard, and okay, admittedly the shift in scenery is very abrupt, and it doesn't segue smoothly. All right, it is. So you've gone from Moonlight Sonata to Ride of the Valkyries, or maybe the other way around, Ride of the Valkyries right into Moonlight Sonata. But it just boom, you change the course of the whole verses there, and instead of a vineyard that doesn't produce anything, that we talked about last week, where the vineyards had shriveled grapes and of course no wine. Now he's talking about a vineyard that's a delight, and that he, Adonai himself, is nurturing and watering and guarding it against all enemies. And in that future day, talking about in the millennial period, God is not going to be angry with his people anymore. Why? Because they have come to recognize him and his son, the Messiah, and he will defend his people against all odds and against all enemies. So that's what that is, and so. Rather, let them rely on my strength. Let them make peace with me. In days to come, Jacob will take root, Israel will blossom and bud and fill the world with fruit. Okay, we have to kind of go back to verse 4 there. It says, who will give me thorns and thistles? Into battle I would march against them, the enemies of Israel. I would burn them all together. Then it says, rather than me doing that, burning all them, let them rely on my strength. Let them stand back and look at my massive and just overwhelming shock and awe power, and let them. Let me get my notes here, because I tried to put it there so you can make some sense out of it. But he said, let them, the enemies of Israel, make peace. And then it says it again, make peace with me. And so the emphasis you could say is that, okay, let them, the enemies of Israel, make peace with me. And then when it says again, it says make peace with me. And I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but when I was reading it, it did. And so God is, it reminded me of going back into the book of John, where in chapter 3 says, where he's not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. God doesn't take any pleasure in the death of the wicked. And so here he's saying, instead of coming and fighting Israel and fighting me, let's just make peace. Why can't you just make peace? And so you kind of get the idea that he's saying, like, when Adonijah was against David and the coronation of Solomon, he ran and threw himself onto the horns of the altar and pleaded for sanctuary. And so that's what God is saying, just plead sanctuary. But it's in the end, then it says that Israel is going to prevail and that it's going to blossom and be fruitful. We see a little bit of that already in this world, where if you go to Israel and you can see how that, oh my goodness, they've sure made the desert bloom. Going ahead, did he strike Israel as he struck those who struck them, or were they slain as their slayers were slain? You contend with her by banishing her, by driving her away. This with his fierce wind, he expelled them on the day of the east wind. So by this will Jacob's sin be atoned, and this is the full price to remove his sin, when he makes all the altar stones like shattered chalk stones, so that the Asherah poles and incense rise no more. All right, so this is a rhetorical question where he's saying, did God treat Israel like he treated all of the enemies of Israel? No, he didn't. He chastised them, but they survived. He disciplined, but they survived. And so he's when he says that, where does it say it? With his, you contend with her by banishing her, by driving her away. Now they're using feminine suffixes for Israel in this way, and so that brings up the point maybe of a husband sending his wife away in a divorce, or gets mad at her and just sends her away, and because she burned the challah. I don't know, but then, like, the wind goes through, one of those Sirocco winds comes through. It's fierce, but then it kind of blows away and it's calm again. And so that's kind of the way God was, fierce against his people, but then he's calm. And so it will end up being that there will be an atonement, and that Israel would no longer ever go back into idolatry. We've also seen a little bit of that in the coming back from the Babylonian exile. Israel never again reverted into the same kind of old idolatry that they had before. All right, and it said the fortified city is a lonely habitation, forlorn and forsaken like the desert. There the calf will graze, there lie down and consume its branches. When the boughs are withered, they will be broken off. Women come and set them on fire, for it is a people of no understanding. Therefore their maker will show them no mercy. He who formed them will give them no grace. All right, this is a picture, I think, of the Babylonian, the world system, the world order that is going to be just destroyed. And this is where the calf will graze, meaning that there's going to be grass growing in the streets, and they're going to just eat up the low-hanging branches, anything that's green. It says when the boughs are withered, they're broken off, and so women will be actually going through the towns or the city and harvesting firewood where these used to be parks and beautiful fruit trees or whatever. Now they're just nothing but firewood. So it's a picture of complete desolation of the enemies of Israel. And finally, it will come about in that day, Adonai will thresh from the channel of the river of to the wadi of Egypt, and you will be gathered one by one, Bnei Israel. It will also come about in that day, a great shofar will be blown. Those perishing in the land of Assyria and the exiles in the land of Egypt will come and worship Adonai on the holy mountain in Jerusalem. So in that day, in the millennial period, when the Messiah comes back, he's going to gather up his remnant of people, and it's going to be from all over the world. He's going to gather them up like a farmer gathers up crops, and he will destroy the enemies, all the enemies of Israel at that point, and then the regathered Israel will, they're going to be, a lot of them were going to be in Israel, and they're going to live there and function there, rule and reign with him. Now, so that it's going to be, like the greatest day of atonement ever. And now there are those that say, well, this is that's not talking about Israel at all. It's talking about the redeemed, the church, and that there will be that. But let's remember that a lot of this stuff is Israel centric, and that the redeemed of the Gentiles, while they are there, they're present, they're blessed, and so forth, there's a special place in God's heart for his own people. Okay. And so I know it's late in the night to get into that, but so that ends this portion of Isaiah, and we're going to be going into another portion from chapter 28 on to 33, I believe, whatever it was, and 39. And that's a completely different section. We're going to be talking about the judgments against the whole world, the entirety of the world. A little bit different slant. So any comments or questions tonight before we shut it down? All right, let's see that there is a chat. Okay. All right. Okay. And Deanie, I hope you're feeling better after your fall. That you're healing up okay. We missed you yesterday. Okay. Any comments? If there's not, then we'll let you go, and we will see you on Shabbat. Those of you that live down here with us, and those of you that don't, well, then I'll see you next Sunday night, Bezrat Hashem, the Lord willing. And have a good week. Shavua Tov. Have a good night. Lila Tov. Good night.